In July of 1994, 14-year-old Tanya Frazier was just days away from receiving her very first paycheck from her very first job. At 11 a.m. on July 18th, Tanya finished her last summer school class and was on her way to that job at a local nonprofit thrift store when she mysteriously vanished. Later that night, Tanya's younger sister Tiara slept with her window open, waiting to hear her sister walking into their Mount Baker home. Tiara thought that Tanya must have gone out with friends that night and just wanted to hear the keys jingling and the door opening so she could sleep peacefully for the rest of the night. That peaceful night's rest didn't happen for another 31 years. Welcome to the KDZ Crime Channel.
First Florida man was Hernando de Soto.
When Tanya didn't arrive home at 6 p.m. as expected, her mother, Teresa, went to Tanya's job at the Chicken Soup Brigade thrift shop on Jackson Avenue, only to find out that Tanya never showed up for work that day. Teresa headed over to the Edmund Meany Middle School to look for her eldest daughter there. She couldn't find her anywhere. Teresa reported Tanya missing to the police at 7:30 that night. The police showed very little concern and tried to convince her family that she's just a runaway and she would most likely come back on her own. The initial police report actually listed Tanya as a runaway despite objections from everybody that Tanya knew. All of her friends, all of her family told the police this is not Tanya. She would not do this. Tanya was a shy, polite, and very responsible kid. Running away simply was just not in her character. Not only that, but Tanya didn't take any of her belongings with her. She didn't even have the money that she had been saving up to buy her and her little sister pagers that summer. When the Frazier's church community found out that Tanya was missing, they all came together to distribute missing persons flyers all over the neighborhood. Over 1,500 flyers and posters were distributed over the next few days. 5 days after Tanya was last seen at that bus stop outside of her school, a 62-year-old man was walking his dog on East Highland Drive when he was hit with a wall of putrid scent. When he looked for the source of the smell, he found Tanya lying at the base of a tree at the bottom of a ravine. He said it took him several seconds to process what his eyes were actually seeing. Tanya was stabbed in the head, the upper chest, and her throat was slit. The insect activity on Tanya's body showed that she was killed just 3 days earlier, even though she had been missing for 5. On Thursday, November 6th, 2025, King County prosecutors charged Mark Anthony Russ, age 57, with 1 count of murder in the first degree with a sexual motivation after Seattle police said they linked him to Frazier's murder through DNA. He has a lengthy criminal history. In 1996, Russ was given a life sentence under Washington's persistent offender law, also known as the Three Strikes Law, after being convicted of several violent crimes in the 1980s and 1990s. His life sentence was vacated due to the sentencing reforms passed by the state legislature in 2021, and he was released from custody. He was then rearrested on November 6th in connection with Frazier's murder. Investigators allege Russ was not complying with the requirements of his status as a registered sex offender when he was arrested. Let's watch this press conference.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. Sean Barnes, Shonbarnes, Chief of Police, although I believe I've met everyone in the room. For more than 30 years, Tanya's family wanted nothing more than answers, closure, and justice. As a father of 3 kids, I can't imagine the pain Tanya's family had to endure. Today, I am grateful to announce that we have finally found the man responsible for taking her life. That man is in a King County jail, just an earshot away from where we stand. And although he cannot hear my voice, my goal is to make sure that the voice of the King County justice system is heard in his. Why? Because Tanya's life matters. She was only 14 years old. She was a daughter, sister, and a friend. She had just finished middle school and also worked in volunteer service. Her life mattered. Let me say that again. Her life mattered. Detective Norton never gave up. He is the best of the best, in a department that does not rest until the job is done. I offer my deepest condolences and my personal prayers to her family. I offer my deepest appreciation to everyone involved, the men and women of the Seattle Police Department and our partners who worked for more than 31 years to bring justice and to bring closure. It's my pleasure to now introduce Detective Norton with a few case notes. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Rolf Norton. It's ROLFNORTON. First, I'd like to acknowledge the original case detectives on this investigation who really set the investigative foundation that allowed future generations of detectives to get where we are today. And those detectives are Greg Mixell and Tom Pike. Back in 1994, we didn't have a CSI team. Homicide detectives went and processed the scene for evidence. And in this case, due to staffing or whatever was going on that Saturday afternoon in July of 1994, the lead detectives were also the scene detectives. So they did double duty. And the fact that we're here 31 years later talking about how physical evidence got us to the finish line is really remarkable and a testament to their skills and efforts back in July of 94. Along with that, we need to acknowledge all the work done by the Washington State Patrol Crime Laboratory scientists who have been working this case for 3 decades, tirelessly and enduring, testing evidence, retesting evidence, analyzing evidence, reanalyzing evidence, until advances allowed us to get to the conclusions we were able to make in November of 2025. And on that note, special consideration to the last scientist on this case, Catherine Hinkle, who really got us to the finish line. Now, yesterday we made an arrest on a case we've been working on for a very long time. And we've been here before, and we're gonna be here again. Now, that being said, today's not the day to take a victory lap. It's not a day to dance, to slap hands and like ourselves a lot. Today's a day to double down and refocus as we go to the next phase, the next part of this process in the criminal justice system, and do everything we can to assist the King County Prosecutor's Office in being successful in their mission. And to echo the Chief's comments, today's a day to take a step back and reflect on Tanya Frazier and to think about Tanya Frazier's family, her mother Teresa, and her sister Tiara. Thanks.
I think we'll take a couple of questions.
Chief, can you report detective on a specific break in the case? You mentioned advancements in DNA technology. Can you get a little more into the specific turning point?
I can address that generally. Obviously, we have a suspect under arrest who will be charged, and most of these questions, as far as the case details, need to be answered at a later time in a different location. That location is going to be the King County Courthouse. But on general terms, every day we can do more with less in forensic evidence and specifically with DNA. So going back to 1994, you could test for body fluids. Okay, going into the early 2000s, 2001, you can start testing for DNA, but it's a tough process. You're dealing with challenges of mixtures between victims and suspects and things like that. And as you progress and go further and further, you could just do more and more and more. You go back and retest things that you didn't get much result back a decade earlier that now opens doors. We'll address that when we are at the King County Courthouse as this case develops.
Can you talk anything about circumstance arrest?
Not today.
Was DNA ran through the inmate database or code?
CODIS, yes. Yes.
Did it appear this could have been a...
We'll save that answer to that question for later.
Can you talk to at all cause of death?
I'm trying to remember the exact wording. She died from sharp force injuries to her neck and head.
This may be out of your purview, Chief Detective, but this is a man that was once convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Through resentencing, was arrested on the streets. Any thoughts on that?
I'll speak.
Yeah.
You know, people forget that it's supposed to be a criminal justice system. We're just one part. I'm just thankful that our officers and our detectives did their part and did their work and never gave up. You know, the term cold case is a outdated term. We really don't use that anymore. Maybe it plays for the television cameras or for Hollywood, but for us, no case ever grows cold. We passed that case on to other detectives, like Detective Norton got passed on the case, and we continue to work it until we find a resolution for that case. So we're going to continue to work this and other cases until we see it totally through, like the detective mentioned earlier. Thank you so much. If you have any specific questions about the case that are, I guess, quantitative, we can get you those answers because we don't want to misspeak about something. So thank you so much.
I love seeing the bad guys get caught. They can do way more with the modern technology now than they could back then. DNA was a thing back then, so they knew to collect it, but it took this long to figure out who this guy was because of modern technology and because these wonderful officers stayed on the case and Tanya was not forgotten. Now, I wanted to look into this Mark Anthony Russ guy to see what his background was about. So I did a little digging and I'm going to share that with you guys now. So this is all from court records. In 1987, the court records show that Russ stabbed his girlfriend multiple times in the leg, crotch, stomach, and head. The woman required 175 stitches while being treated at Harborview Medical Center. The defendant called the ex-girlfriend at the hospital. So she's in the hospital getting stitched up 175 stitches. This guy calls her and says to her that he intended to finish the job. This is all in the charging documents. In 1991, Russ was convicted of robbery in the second degree from taking money from a Washington athletic club in Seattle while telling employees he had a gun. Armed robbery. In 1996, police arrested Russ for a violent home invasion where he attempted to rape a woman in Tukwila. According to the charges, Russ forced his way into a home, threatened a house cleaner with a knife while taking her money and forcing her to take him to a jewelry box. Investigators from the Tukwila police said the woman reported that Russ tried to rape her, but she told him she was on her period. Russ was convicted of burglary, attempted rape in the first degree, and robbery in that case. The conviction counted as his third strike under the Washington laws at the time, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. So I bet you're wondering why. Why on earth did they arrest him out and about? They didn't arrest him in a jail. He was out on the street. That's because in 2019, the Washington state legislature removed robbery in the second degree from the list of offenses that counted as a strike. That change should not have applied to old cases, only new cases, like going forward. It shouldn't have counted retroactively. However, in 2021, Senator Jeannie Darnell, a Democrat from Tacoma, sponsored State Bill 5164, which allowed inmates to petition for resentencing if one of their strike offenses was robbery in the second degree. According to Darnell, the law would apply to approximately 64 inmates who were serving life sentences with robbery in the second degree as one of their strikes. This bill passed the legislature and was signed into law by Governor Jay Inslee. Later that year, Russ applied for resentencing, which he was granted, and he was sentenced to time served. So he was released from prison in 2021. I have an interview here pulled up from the original detective on the case. So I'm going to play that for you. This case seemed to be very close to his heart, and I just wanted you guys to see this.
Well, I remember it because, first of all, it was the first murder case I ever worked on because I'd just gone to homicide when this happened. And I wasn't the primary detective, but I was with them working the case and running around digging a lot of stuff. Of course, this was a big case because an innocent child killed. They pull out all the stops for a case like that. And this girl didn't do anything to get herself killed. I mean, she wasn't gangbanging or anything like that. So we worked really hard, and we had a couple people in mind with this case, and we're looking at them. But this guy, to my knowledge, his name never came up. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the name. I don't. Of course, he looks different now because he would have been in his 20s when this happened. But I don't know how, unless he just came across her. But the thing about these cases, they never go away. And I have talked to somebody about this case every year since it happened. I mean, I've done 3 or 4 podcasts about this case. I've talked to the detectives when it went to the cold case unit. A couple of my old partners were in cold case. I said, pull this out. And matter of fact, one of my old partners who was in there pulled it out and found the guy that we thought might have done it, and actually got a DNA sample from him, which cleared him. It wasn't to show it wasn't him. So, I mean, DNA convicts the guilty, but also exonerates the innocent. And so, it's just one of those cases that sticks with you your whole career.
Do you feel some sort of sense of relief?
Oh yeah, and I got a text last night from a friend who said, "Did you hear they made an arrest in the Tanya Frazier case?" I said, "I haven't heard anything." And then this morning I saw the reports of it. So, oh, they did. They actually made an arrest. So, yeah.
Hard work pays off.
Yeah, well, never give up. It never goes away. And because of the advances in forensic science, all these cases of 30, 40, 50 years ago are dropping like flies. And, before, to have a 50-year-old case solved was really an anomaly, but it's not. It's routine now, because forensic science has advanced more in the last 5 or 10 years than it did in the previous 50. So, I mean, when this happened, for DNA, you needed a biological sample about the size of a quarter to get a DNA comparison. Now you need 1 or 2 cells. So, I mean, and there was no way to recover touch. You didn't even know the term touch DNA back then, but now we do, and you can get stuff off clothing or whatever. And there are different ways to get it, like with the MVAC, wet vacuum DNA system, which I don't know for a fact they're using this, but they may have, which is 1,400 times more reliable to get that than cutting and swabbing the old way. And so it's just, all these cases are dropping like flies.
What were the circumstances? Because I know she was found not far from where she was last.
Right.
I mean, did witnesses say was she picked up?
I don't think anybody saw it. She walked out the doors and just disappeared. And I didn't have any knowledge of this case till her body was found. Right, they get called to a scene. She was on just in Montlake area. Highland Street comes down, right near where it connects. I think that's 24th there, or maybe it's Montlake Avenue. And there's a grassy area or a wooded area between the two streets, and she was kind of down this embankment. Yeah, like she was dumped there. She was mostly nude. I remember she had a handprint on her right thigh. It looked like a bloody handprint. 4 fingers you could see for clear, but there were no rigid details or anything on her leg. And then a few weeks later, her clothing was found all dry and like it had just been put there out by the West Seattle golf course. So, that was a big thing with this whiteness. I mean, he kept the clothing for a while and put it out there. I don't know if they got the DNA off that or if they redid, because the type of DNA they did at the time was called RFLP, which is not compatible with CODIS and stuff now. It's STR. So they would have had to do it all over again. And I don't know if they got the clothing or if they just redid the samples that they had at the scene, because we had DNA at the time, but it was, yeah. I worked hundreds and hundreds of murders, hundreds of them. And everything from the gangbanger on the corner to serial murderers. So it's really hard to pick one out that matches it. But this is, like I said, this is a case that stuck with me and all the other guys that worked on it since the day it happened, or the day she was found 31 years ago.
We're glad to see that they.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm glad for the family can finally find out who the son of a bitch was that did this. Like I said before, there's no closure for families in this. That's an overused term of closure. You never have closure. She'll be gone forever, and the families will always mourn for her. But there is that piece of satisfaction knowing what happened or who did it, and that person is being held responsible.
I'm so happy that this family finally has answers. I can't imagine what they've been going through for the past 31 years. And I'm so happy that Mark Anthony Russ is finally going to face the justice that he deserves, and that he's off the street. You could see from his past, he would have reoffended again and again and again. I'm Katie Zed. Please come hang out in my live streams on Wednesdays and Friday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, have a great day, guys. Bye.
First Florida man was Hernando de Soto. First Florida man, Hernando de Soto. First Florida man was Hernando de Soto. Won't you solo go show off your photos?